Anna from Craft Me a Card, and I love crafting for the crafter, and that is you. In today's video, I want to start a little mini series on how to use wrapping paper to create cards. If you're a little like me, you have some wrapping paper that you don't use. Sometimes those gift bags are so much easier to use than wrapping a gift, and we just put these wrapping papers in the back burner and they get forgotten. Or it also could be that somebody wrapped a gift for you in this pretty wrapping paper and you just felt too guilty to crumple up and throw it away, and you have it sitting there somewhere. So let me go ahead and start this mini series with this monster wrapping paper, and this is reversible, so I have two sides to play with here, and I will show you later on in the series a way you can use reversible paper to your advantage when wrapping a gift. Anyways, I like this paper because it has a lot of different words and sentiments that you can use. The front also has sentiments we could cut out. So I decided to use this little green guy here with these big eyes. And what I'm going to do is just cut a piece of this paper and cut this little green guy out. And I start off with my cutting knife, but then I also go ahead and use some scissors. So whatever you feel more comfortable with using, go ahead and you cut these little images out. Keep in mind that this paper is very thin, so sometimes a cutting knife or a crafter's knife is not always the best option. So you can always resort to some good scissors. Once I have them cut out, I decide, okay, what am I going to be using for my first layer on the card? You know, I like to put a little border always on my cards. So I decided to go with this metallic blue. I think metallic cardstock is always so fun. It just brings a card to a next level. And I think that this card could use some of that oomph that this metallic gives. What I'm going to do is just grab a circle metal die and die cut it out of this blue. Stick this little cute green monster onto the die cut piece. I go ahead and I apply liquid glue to it. Now we all know that liquid glue and paper don't mix well, meaning that when you apply the liquid glue onto paper, it tends to bubble up. So a way to avoid this, or to help this actually, I go ahead and I spread it with my fingers, creating a very thin layer on the back of this piece. Then I just go ahead and I stick it on the circle. I did forget to mention that I cut the circle out of the first layer of the card. I cut it out of the piece that will not be seen because we're going to be putting a second piece on top of it. And then I just went ahead with my crafter's knife and I cut the inside piece of it. I don't know if I'll be needing it later, and it just helps keep some weight off of the card. Okay, now to decide what side to use. So I put my little green guy on the side where we have all the monsters, and I feel that it is too busy. So then I flip it around and I see that the back side of the paper is a lot better. So I decide to use that side to put my little green guy on. Because we are dealing with paper, it's always a good idea to stick it onto a thicker piece of cardstock. And just by applying liquid glue on the back side, using actually this makeup applicator with a silicone tip that I got at the Dollar Tree, I go ahead and I disperse the glue, you know, just leaving a really thin layer on the cardstock, and then I apply the wrapping paper on top and I smooth it out. And it came out perfect. It looks great. Next, I decided to take one of those word bubbles and cut out the one that says party. I think this little green guy looks like a partier, so I decided to do that one. And doing the same as I did with the second layer there, I go ahead and I apply the liquid glue to the back of the wrapping paper, and I stick it onto some thicker cardstock just to make it sturdier. So I felt my little green guy needed something more. It needed oomph. So I decided to cut a second layer with this purple metallic paper and just stick it under the blue just to give it a two-tone look. Sometimes simple additions like this, like adding another layer or a different color, really helps liven a project up. All right, now I'm going to pop it up with a little bit of foam adhesive, and it's ready to be placed on the front of the card. Once I have this front layer complete, I go ahead and I stick it on top of the card. That already has the first layer stuck onto it, which is that metallic blue. For the sentiment of party, I felt that it needed to be complete a little bit, so I just go and sponge the edges with some vintage photo. So then I also add some foam adhesive to pop this one out, and I stick it right on top of the green monster's head. Adding corners to a card is always a good way to help the eye move all around the card. I cut 4 corners out of this metallic purple, and I go ahead and I put them on some foam adhesive to stick them up as well. And with liquid glue, I stick them on to the corners. Then, of course, what's a party without confetti? So I grab some Guillotin glue and I add some sequins all around the card just to liven it up. Card 1, super easy, is complete. All right, so card number 2, but there are so many possibilities. Yes, there are so many possibilities, but I decided to go with this little pink monster here. I thought he's super cute, so I want to do this card more for like a girl. So I go ahead, same process. Cut out, stick to a cardstock, cut that one out. And what this little monster inspired me to do is to like have it popping out of a gift. So I just grab a piece of cardstock and I cut a piece of the wrapping paper, add some liquid glue to it, disperse it with my makeup applicator, and then add the piece of wrapping paper that I cut out to fit this piece. And I do the same thing with the lid. Just to have this monster have a nicer finish, I go around the edges with a marker and I just color in those white edges. Like I want this card more for a girl, I decide to use the metallic purple and I cut the base for the card and I go ahead and I take out the inside piece to use later and I glue this piece onto my card base. So I wanted to bring out some of that fun green that this wrapping paper has, but I couldn't find the exact green I wanted. So I did find one sheet that apparently I cut some leaves out of. So I went ahead and I cut an inside piece for this card. So keep in mind, this was the only piece of this green that I had, and when I cut it, I noticed that I snipped it. Somehow it wasn't large enough, but I had already messed the whole piece up. So I decided to add something to it like it was always intended to be that way. So by pulling out some punches, I found a flower one, which really resembled like if it were bites of a monster given to the piece of paper. So that's how I masked this oopsie that I had here at the very top corner and making it seem like a fun piece. And then I decided that I wanted some dimension to it, so I went ahead and I grabbed this embossing folder and I ran it through my machine. And now I have a very nice embossed background for my monster. I decided to add some fuzzies to the antennas of my monster, and I got these balls at, I believe it was Hobby Lobby. I had really tiny little fun balls, and I think that this was a fun addition to this pink monster. With the help of some tweezers, I helped these set in place. And for my sentiment, I decided to grab this tag that has 2 holes on the side and heat emboss a sentiment from a stamp set I believe I found on Amazon. I'll link it in the description box below. And I just go ahead and I add some anti-static powder to it and I stamp it with some ink. And I just dip it into my white embossing powder. Yoo-hoo! And with my heat tool, I help it set. So this tag has 2 holes, one on each side. So there were 3 things I could have done. Just ran a ribbon through it, or added some brads, or added eyelets. And eyelets is something that I don't use very often, and I would like to use more because I have some. So I decided to add some eyelets to it. This tool here is going to help me set the eyelet, and this is called a crocodile. It's by Wear Memory Keepers, and it helps you set the eyelets. It also has other functions, like it has 2 different sizes of hole punches. And so anyways, what you do is you place the eyelet where you want it, you get the crocodile, and you go ahead and you insert the little piece it has, the extended piece, inside the eyelet. Press on the crocodile and this will flatten it out, making it super secure. I mean, you will not be able to take this eyelet off of this tag. So next I grab a little bit of ribbon and I like to burn the edges just to avoid it from fraying. And I pass one little point through one of the holes and the other little point through the other hole. And that makes a little nice embellishment here. Then I add some foam adhesive to the back and I stick it in the middle of the card towards the top, on top of the monster. So cutesy patootsy! Okay, so once again I decide to add some sequins to the card just to make it a little more fun. And I like to pull out these square sequins that I have that I do not remember for the life of me where I got them, but I love them. And just I place these all over the card. This completes card number 2. So for card number 3, I decide to have these monsters peeking in through different sides of the card. So I go ahead and I cut out 3 monsters, stick them on the cardstock. And a good tip here is to grab a piece of cloth and just run it over the image, and this helps flatten the image out and eliminate any bubbles that might exist under the paper. Then again, cut them out. I think one thing that I would do different here is just go ahead and put the piece like a square of where the image is that you want to cut out. Just go ahead and flatten that and stick it onto the cardstock and then cut it out, instead of having to go through this tedious little process of cutting out every little edge and corner twice, if that makes any sense. And just go ahead and cut it intricately once by sticking the image in a square form onto the cardstock, and then going out and cutting it out with your crafter's knife or scissors. Okay, so once again, I am going to use the side of the paper that has the wording, that doesn't have the faces of the monsters on them, but it has this word birthday right in the middle of it. A good way to cover something that you don't want is by adding ribbon. So I find a pretty ribbon that is thick, and I go ahead and I cover this word out. And it also helps as an embellishment, and it helps the card look pretty. Since this ribbon is a little wide, I decide to go ahead and grab a thinner piece of green ribbon and just add it to the middle of that purple ribbon. Then I go ahead and I add my monsters coming from different corners, and I put these on also on foam adhesive. I really like how these little pom-poms worked out with the other monsters, so I went ahead and I did the same thing for this pink monster. For my sentiment, I decided to say have a blast, because these guys, they just look classy. They look like they're having a blast. And I was able to find these 2 sets of stickers, of letter stickers. One of them is chipboard, and the other one is like some kind of rubber or plastic. And I was lucky to use them. They've been in my stash for a while. For the letters that are in white, I decided to use alcohol marker, and these are Spectrum Noir markers. I decided to go ahead and color the letters in orange. And on top of this, I went ahead and I added some glitter glue. Now, this big bottle of glitter glue is from the Dollar Tree, and I wanted to compare it against the Stickles. And right off the bat, I could tell that the glitter glue from the Dollar Tree has less glitter, like has more glue to it. And Stickles seems to have the glitter a little more prominent. You could see it more. So you could see here the card is already dry. The letters H and V in the word have the glitter glue from the Dollar Tree, and the letters A and E in the word have the glitter glue from Stickles. So the difference is quite noticeable. But hey, maybe you don't need so much glitter in what you're doing, and the glue from the Dollar Tree is something that works for you. This was the side-by-side comparison of both. Some footage that got lost was when I cut the corners of opposite ends of the card just to give it a different look, and I added a little brad to them, to those 2 corners. And to balance the card out, I just rounded the other 2 opposite corners of the card. So here are the 3 cards, and looking at them, I just felt they were missing something. And that's when I decided googly eyes. And yes, I went ahead and I searched for some googly eyes, and I put them on each of these cute little monster eyes. So now I was content with them, and I called them complete. So here are my 3 cards. Please let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. For next week, I have other cards that I will be creating using wrapping paper. I hope, as always, that you get inspired. I hope you create and be happy. Please, if you have not already done so, I invite you to please subscribe, like, and comment. And as always, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Where did I get this from? Oh. What the heck?